A little while ago, I made a video talking about what I thought what the worst track in Mario Kart Wii was. Of course, the track was Parkway, because everybody should, at least, hate Parkway, and if you don't, well, I really am concerned for you. Now, a slightly more controversial thing would be saying what the arguably best track in Mario Kart Wii is. And although all of the footage thus far has been on Toad's Factory, I will go out and say right now, it's not Toad's Factory. Although I will say this track is my favorite square of all time. Now I will go out right now and say that I have a favorite track and a track that I think is the best. And they are definitely not the same. Now, as many of you know, my favorite track of all time is Mushroom Gorge. However, based on the three main categories from the last video, I don't think this fits the description as good as the actual track that we'll be looking at today. And if you don't know what the three main categories are, let me fill you in on that right now. The first main category is Prettiness, which is divided into three main subcategories: vibrancy, atmosphere, and whether or not it has piantas, the most important one. The second main category is how fun a track is to drive, which I don't think I should explain. That's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, a track will get bonus points if it has cool shortcuts and piantas. Let's not forget about the piantas. And minus points for having slippery road, because I hate slippery road. Of course, we do have to keep in mind, this is a subjective opinion, but it's my subjective opinion, so it's correct. And for the last main category, it is how comebackable a track is. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that a track that is really comeback friendly is better than a track that isn't, although it definitely sounds like it. What I mean is that I like tracks that I know what's going to happen when I go into the race. For example, for an awful, ungodly track like DK's Jungle Parkway, that would not be very comebackable, because sometimes I front run peacefully, and sometimes I can make the biggest comeback of all time. I like consistency with my tracks. So we're looking for a track that is pretty, fun to drive, and does not have very much variation in terms of what kind of race you're going to get. And now, for the great reveal of the best track in Mario Kart Wii. Nah, I'm just kidding. We have to talk about one more thing. So why not Mushroom Gorge? Of course, since it's a subjective video and this is my favorite, why not just say this is the best? Well, although I love Mushroom Gorge to death, I think it would just be a little hypocritical to put this as the best. I mean, sure, it's pretty, but it doesn't have piantas. It's pretty fun to drive, but the respawns are just not good. One bit. And half the time I play this track, I front run it peacefully. And the other half, I'm making comebacks for days. So it just doesn't fit the criteria for the best track, in my opinion. Although it is still a banger of a track. But for real this time, what really is the best track in Mario Kart Wii? It's Delfino Square. I bet none of you saw this coming. As soon as I mentioned piantas, I'm pretty sure every single person got this. The only other track with piantas is Peach Beach, and do you really think I'd choose Peach Beach as the best? Sorry, Jackson, I know you love Peach Beach, but it's just not as good as this one. So let's start off with the first main category, Prettiness. This track is absolutely gorgeous. I love the theming so much. Funnily enough, even though it's got piantas everywhere in a clear as day sky, it doesn't remind me that much of Super Mario Sunshine. Which I'm totally okay with, because Sunshine was not exactly my favorite Mario game. Just looking at the colors of the trees, it reminds me of a fall season, not so much summer vacation. And I honestly really like that decision. It gives a new perspective of the piantas in a season other than summertime, which I think is a really cool touch. The atmosphere is just 2-minute, 30-second lap. What? The atmosphere is just amazing. Of course, it does have piantas, which is why it's the best. But not just the piantas. The entire town itself just feels so alive. Everything from the seagulls flying overhead to the shirts hanging on a clothesline just make this track feel so alive. It doesn't feel like a racetrack that's designed as a town. It feels like you're actually racing through a town. The colors of the flag and the sky and the buildings just makes everything feel so warm and at home. Although it might seem like the bright yellow signs contrast with the brown and white houses, it actually makes for a really nice look. The colors and the atmosphere mesh together so well that you forget that the piantas only have two versions of movement. Looking at the low resolution of the signs on the side of the road and the lack of fluid motion from the piantas makes you remember this is a Wii game after all. The Wii has less computing power than a caveman counting sticks. But when you're focused on the race and you're zipping by all the piantas and low-resolution signs, all of that just doesn't matter at the end of the day. The signs and the piantas and the skybox and the trees might not all look like the prettiest things in the world, but they're definitely enough to make this place feel like home. And now for our second main category, how fun is it to drive? This track is an absolute blast and actually makes me feel like I'm super good at the game sometimes. Of course, it is only a banana cup track, it's not supposed to be the hardest track ever, but I think the difficulty here is just perfect. The best way to take each turn isn't overly tricky, but they all do take practice. Muscle memory and track knowledge are still super important here, but a beginner isn't going to be lost on this track because of how simple it is. In lots of regards, I think this one can go in tandem with Maple Treeway. Everybody loves that track because of the scenery and atmosphere. In fact, many people say it's their favorite because of those two things. And although it's definitely fun to drive, at the end of the day, it just feels like if Reggie made a custom track. And I think this one gets the best of both worlds. And not to rag on Maple Treeway or anything, that track is also fantastic. I just think this one thrives from its simplicity a little more. On a track as complex as Maple Treeway, most of the time I have to think about how I'm going to take the turns, versus actually thinking about what's going on in the race. But on Delfino Square, I have more time to focus on what's going on in the race, and less so how to take each turn. And even though it's simple, it's still the best kind of simple. Another track that's simple is Luigi Circuit, but that one's awful just because of how boring and generic it is. This track is definitely simple, but it's intuitive with its simplicity. It's not hard to drive, but there's still different paths you can take, different shortcuts that you can take, shroomless or not shroomless shortcuts that you can take that will spice the race up. And none of these different routes and shortcuts are overly difficult to learn. They're all relatively simple, but since there's so many of them, it keeps each race fresh. And in case that wasn't enough, there's absolutely zero slippery road. Nice. So in conclusion, the track's simplicity makes it easy for newcomers and better to focus on the race. The different routes and shortcuts spice up each race and keep it from being boring, which I would argue is the key component that separates it from another simple track like Luigi Circuit. And on top of that, the lack of slippery road makes it just a blast to drive. And for our last main category, the comeback ability of the track. Now I'll be totally honest, this one, it's not that extreme. Sometimes I front run peacefully, sometimes I don't. And I have definitely made that sound like a bad thing. However, it's really only bad to a degree. You see, I said the same thing about DK's Jungle Parkway, but what separates this from Parkway is that I know what I'm supposed to do in whatever position I'm in. Except for fourth, but I don't think I'll ever know what to do in fourth. You just gotta hope for those savior triple mushrooms, man. But back to the point I'm making. On DK's Jungle Parkway, if you're in first and you've got a 2 or 3 second lead, that is definitely not an assured W for you. That stress-inducing unpredictability is just looming over you at all times. And if you're in the back and you have, say, a golden mushroom or a star, there's no real way to tackle making a comeback on DK's Jungle Parkway. But it's time to stop talking about Parkway because we've done that enough already. This track has 2 cookie-cutter shortcuts on it, or really 3, but when you combine them, it makes the third one. Of course, I'm talking about the double shortcut, the dock, and the actual shortcut. These 2 shortcuts make the track not only predictable, but easier to know what you're supposed to do when you're either in last or in first. Not sure what to do between last and first, I'm usually in either one or the other. No, I'm just kidding, but based on whatever position you're in or what item you're in, it's easy to see how the race is going to play out and how you should act accordingly, which I think adds just another layer of skill onto this track. Because of course on a track like Luigi Circuit, you'll get your classic Mario Karted moments, but on this that just doesn't really happen as often. And it's because of the way the track is laid out. Whether you're aware of it or not, crazy Mario Karted moments just don't happen here all that often because you know what you're supposed to do and how to act accordingly, like I said before. So to support my thesis statement with 3 solid examples, A, the track is super pretty and the piantas make the atmosphere perfect. B, the track is fun to drive and the different routes and shortcuts spices each race up every time. And C, the chaos of this track is substantially lowered down because of the way the track is laid out so that each racer approaches every turn and every decision in the best possible way. Wow, this video is so formal, I think I should write the description in MLA format. And with that, small fries, Delfino Square is, after all, the best track in the game, and if you disagree, you can cry yourself to sleep tonight because it is objective opinion. And before I close us off, small fries, I would just like to say thank you so much for all the support I've gotten over the last few months. Y'all are the reason I have grown my channel from like 100 to 600 subscribers, and I hope we can see a little more growth as we go along in our journey. And just thank you so much. I love y'all. And with that, small fries, I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe, stay cute, stay loyal, because I already know you are, and goodbye.